J.D. Vance. Denied service at restaurant, what he did next shocked everyone. The crowded restaurant in downtown Cincinnati was buzzing with life on a chilly Friday evening. J.D. Vance, U.S. Senator and author of Hillbilly Elegy, walked in quietly with a small group of friends. Known for his meteoric rise from the poverty of Appalachia to the halls of Congress, Vance had become a polarizing figure in the political landscape. His policies and opinions had garnered him both admiration and animosity, and tonight, that division was about to unfold in a way no one expected. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below and please like the video. Thank you. As he approached the hostess stand, a young woman glanced up at him, her expression shifting from polite neutrality to something more guarded. "Good evening," Vance said with a friendly nod. "Table for 4, please." The hostess hesitated, her smile faltering. She looked over her shoulder toward the bar, where a group of staff members had started whispering and stealing glances at the senator. After an awkward pause, she leaned in closer and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't serve you tonight." Vance blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Excuse me?" he asked, his tone calm but clearly surprised. "I'm really sorry," the hostess repeated, shifting uncomfortably. It's the owner's policy. He doesn't want to serve you." Her voice dropped further, almost to a whisper. "It's political." The words hung in the air for a moment as the noise of the restaurant seemed to fade into the background. J.D. Vance, a man who had navigated countless storms in his life, stood there, his face a mix of disappointment and thoughtfulness. Around him, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd as people started recognizing him. Some looked on with sympathy, others with curiosity, and a few with barely concealed smirks. Vance's friends began to protest. "This is absurd," one of them said. "He's a paying customer. You can't just deny him service because of politics." But Vance raised a hand, silencing them. His expression remained composed, but there was a fire in his eyes. "It's fine," he said calmly. "Let's go." As they turned to leave, a man at a nearby table shouted, "Good riddance!" followed by scattered applause from a small group of diners. Others, however, looked visibly uncomfortable, exchanging uneasy glances. Vance walked out into the cold night air, but instead of heading to another restaurant, he stopped on the sidewalk, his mind racing. This wasn't just about him. It was about something larger, something that spoke to the fractures in American society. And in that moment, he decided he wasn't going to let this slide. The next day, Vance took to social media, not to vent his frustration or seek sympathy, but to start a conversation. "Last night I was denied service at a restaurant because of my political beliefs," he wrote. "I'm not angry. I'm not calling for boycotts. But I do think it's worth asking ourselves, is this the kind of country we want to live in? A country where we can't sit at the same table with people we disagree with? Where we can't even share a meal without politics getting in the way?" His post went viral almost instantly, sparking a nationwide debate. Some people condemned the restaurant's actions as divisive and discriminatory, while others argued it was within their rights to refuse service. News outlets picked up the story, and within hours the restaurant's name was trending online. Protesters gathered outside, some holding signs that read, "Free speech for all," while others waved banners saying, "No hate in our state." Meanwhile, Vance stayed out of the public eye, quietly working on what would become one of the most unexpected and impactful responses to the incident. A week later, he returned to the restaurant, not to dine, but to extend an olive branch. Accompanied by a small team, Vance walked in carrying trays of homemade food. The staff, stunned, didn't know how to react as he set up a table outside, inviting anyone, supporters, critics, and even the restaurant owner, to join him for a meal and a conversation. "Food has always brought people together," Vance said to the gathering crowd. "It's a reminder that we're all human, that we all need the same basic things to survive. I'm not here to argue or to win anyone over. I'm here to listen, to understand. Because if we can't even share a meal, how are we supposed to solve the bigger problems facing this country?" The gesture caught everyone off guard. Some people joined him hesitantly, others with enthusiasm. Conversations began, some tense, others heartfelt. People from opposite sides of the political spectrum found themselves laughing over shared stories, or debating passionately but respectfully. The restaurant owner eventually came out, his arms crossed and his expression wary. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, clearly struggling to reconcile his initial decision with the scene unfolding before him. "Because someone has to," Vance replied simply. "We've got enough people tearing each other apart. Let's try something different." The moment was captured on camera and broadcast nationwide, becoming a symbol of reconciliation in a time of division. Vance's actions earned him both praise and criticism, but more importantly, they sparked a broader movement. Inspired by his example, people across the country began hosting unity tables, where individuals with differing views could come together to share meals and conversations. In the months that followed, Vance continued to champion the idea of dialogue over division. The restaurant incident, initially a source of controversy, became a turning point, not just for him, but for everyone who witnessed it. It was a reminder that even in the face of rejection, it's possible to respond with grace, to build bridges instead of walls, and to find common ground where it seems least likely. As the Unity Table movement grew, J.D. Vance's decision to turn rejection into a moment of connection became a cultural phenomenon. People across the country, from small-town diners to urban cafes, began hosting their own gatherings, inspired by his simple yet powerful gesture. Social media lit up with hashtags like #UnityTable and #FoodForethought, and videos of unlikely allies breaking bread together went viral. Celebrities, activists, and even rival politicians publicly endorsed the idea, each participating in their own unity tables to show the importance of conversation over conflict. But while the movement gained momentum, there were still those who were skeptical of J.D. Vance's motives. Critics claimed it was a publicity stunt, a calculated move to paint himself as a unifier while advancing his own political agenda. "You don't erase division with a few potluck dinners," one commentator said during a televised debate. Others argued that the restaurant owner had every right to deny service and that Vance was using the incident to play the victim. Vance remained undeterred. For him, this wasn't about optics or scoring political points. It was personal. He remembered growing up in Middletown, Ohio, watching his family and community torn apart by economic struggles, addiction, and political disillusionment. He had seen firsthand how easily people could turn against each other when life got hard. And now, as someone with a platform, he felt an obligation to do something about it. Behind the scenes, Vance doubled down on his efforts to expand the movement. He partnered with nonprofits, community leaders, and even culinary schools to launch a nationwide initiative called the Common Ground Project. The goal was to fund and organize unity tables in underserved communities, where division often ran deepest. The project provided grants for local organizers to host events, covering everything from food costs to transportation for participants. Vance personally attended several of these gatherings, sometimes traveling for hours just to sit down with a group of strangers and hear their stories. One particularly memorable unity table took place in a small coal mining town in West Virginia. The town had been hit hard by job losses and was deeply divided along political lines. When Vance arrived, the tension in the room was palpable. People sat at separate tables, eyeing each other warily, their differences almost tangible. But as the evening unfolded, something remarkable happened. A retired miner and a young environmental activist, who had initially exchanged heated words, found common ground in their shared love for the region's natural beauty. By the end of the night, they were swapping stories and ideas for how to revitalize the town together. Moments like these reaffirmed Vance's belief in the power of connection. He often reflected on how his own life had been shaped by mentors, friends, and even adversaries who had challenged him to think differently. "No one grows in isolation," he said during a televised interview about the movement. "We're better when we're willing to sit down and listen, even when it's uncomfortable." The restaurant that had initially denied Vance service also became part of the story. The owner, seeing the overwhelming response to the Unity Table movement, reached out to Vance privately. In an emotional conversation, he admitted that his decision to refuse service had been fueled by frustration and anger over the political climate. "I thought I was making a statement," he said, "but I didn't realize how much I was adding to the problem." Vance didn't hesitate to accept the apology. In fact, he proposed hosting a unity table together at the restaurant. The event drew national attention, with people from all walks of life showing up to participate. The sight of the senator and the restaurant owner, once at odds, working side by side to serve food and facilitate conversations, became a powerful symbol of reconciliation. Over time, the impact of the movement began to ripple beyond individual communities. Schools started incorporating unity tables into their curricula, using them as tools to teach students about empathy and conflict resolution. Companies adopted the concept for team-building exercises, fostering better communication among employees with differing views. Even Congress, often a bastion of gridlock and partisanship, saw a handful of members hosting bipartisan unity tables, sparking tentative steps toward cooperation. For J.D. Vance, the journey wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when progress felt slow, when the weight of skepticism and resistance threatened to overshadow the good being done. But he found strength in the stories of ordinary people who had been transformed by the movement, like the single mother who reconciled with her estranged brother at a unity table, or the former gang member who found a mentor and a new path in life through the initiative. Years later, when Vance retired from public office, the unity table movement had become a permanent fixture in American culture. Universities offered scholarships for students who organized community meals, and an annual Day of Unity was celebrated nationwide, encouraging families, neighbors, and even strangers to come together over food and conversation. Vance spent his retirement reflecting on the journey that had started with a single act of rejection. In interviews and speeches, he often said that the restaurant incident was one of the best things that ever happened to him. "It reminded me of the power of small moments," he said during a TED Talk. "One meal, one conversation, one act of kindness. It's amazing how much they can change the world." The restaurant where it all began became something of a pilgrimage site for people inspired by the movement. A plaque on the wall read, "Here, in a moment of division, began a journey of unity that changed countless lives." Asterisk. And as for J.D. Vance, he remained true to his roots, still a man who believed in the power of listening, of learning, and of finding common ground, one table at a time.